So when I woke up today, I was looking for a new anime game to play. And when I say anime game, I don't mean the Dragon Ball Z games and Naruto games. I wanted something different. We have like a few My Hero games, we have a Black Clover game, but what about new variety? What about new games that could be made? So obviously I can't go up to Sony and Microsoft to ask them to make a game, but what I could do is create a YouTube video to put out my ideas of what I want from an anime game. And the first idea that came to my head was a new Vinland Saga game. So before I begin, I'd like to put out there that I'm tired of arena fighter games. And I'm tired of 2D fighting games. I never really liked those in general. So this game would be built off of like my personal preferences. So if you don't like the idea, maybe you can create something that you like more. So the concept that I had in mind was a game called Vinland Saga. Yeah, I know, crazy. But since there's no games before or after this, I just basically went with the title of the anime. And I want this to be sort of like an adventure type game, but also with a fighter aspect. Well, I said I didn't like that earlier, but hear me out, hear me out. So when I think about Villain Saga, what I'm thinking about is like warriors, swords, fighting, shields. And so as I was thinking in this thought process, I thought about the God of War games, which I love a lot. And I really wanted the Villain Saga game to kind of shape around the newest God of War game. And therefore, the first thing that I thought about was the gameplay. So I want this to be an action adventure meets RPG game where you can play through a story mode, you can play through practice, play versus mode, but also a mode called Empire mode, which I'll get into later. Before we go over these modes, I'd like to go over the four characters who you can play throughout some of these modes. So first off, we have Thorfinn. And Thorfinn, I see him as somebody who fight with his dual wield blades, and so his fighting style kind of matches a swift, acrobatic, hand-to-hand combat style. His RPG stats are he has a strength of 8, agility of 10, vitality of 7, stamina of 8, and defense of 7. So before I begin, I would like to explain what each of these stats mean because they're an important aspect of the RPG mechanic of the game. And so strength basically is the amount of damage that you can deal to your opponents with each attack. So a heavy attack with higher strength will do a lot of damage. Agility is like the ability that you have to roll, dodge, or jump with your character. Vitality is like the amount of health that you have. Stamina is the amount of stamina, so how long you can run, how many dodges you can do in a row. And defense is basically like the amount that your armor can withhold. So if you get attacked a lot and have a higher defense, you may have more health. But if you have lower defense, then you may die. So going back to Thorfinn, basically he has a strength of 8, agility of 10, vitality of 7, stamina of 8, and defense of 7, like I said before, because when I think about Thorfinn, I think of a fighter who really jumps a lot, who moves around, try to take his opponent off guard. And he also is very strong, as we saw in his fight against Thorkel. And the reasons his vitality and defense is probably lower because of the fights with Ashland and how they went out, but he's still a very strong fighter and one of the top in the games. So the next thing I want to go over is the controls because every single character in this game has very specific controls and very versatile different buttons that you can push because in a lot of fighting games that I play, I noticed that a lot of characters basically have the same fighting styles, or if you push a button, every character does the same thing like a leg sweep or a punch. And so firstly, to go on Thorfinn, the game is both for PlayStation and Xbox to mention that firstly. And so X or square will activate a quick attack, Y or triangle will be a heavy attack, B or circle will be guard, and directional on the stick or plus A or cross would do a dodge or a jump. R1 or RB will be a special, LB or L1 will be a dagger throw, LT or L2 will be a sprint, RT or R2 will be a stun attack. So one thing that I mentioned that you probably heard a lot in other games is a special. And so a special is like a character specific attack that each character has. So Thorfinn's special is called pinpoint, which allows the player to pinpoint a specific body part on the foe. And so if you hit the same body part 3 times, and there's different effects for each time. And so if you attack the leg, first time it staggers the opponent, which slows down the movement speed. Second time the opponent is immobilized, meaning they can't move. And the third time chops the opponent's whole leg off, which causes bleeding, and the opponent must crawl if they're still alive. And so next is the arms attacks. And the first one is slows down the opponent's attack speed. So like if the opponent has a sword, then they may swing slower speeds to allow you to dodge. And so the second attack on the arms removes the weapons from the foe and the arms can no longer use it. And the third one chops off the foe's arm. So the next body part of the pinpoint special is the torso. And so the first attack on the torso slices through the opponent's body, dealing double damage from a normal attack. And so the second attack on the torso cuts through the opponent, which causes bleeding. And so this is only a thing for the torso. So the third one doesn't do anything. So if you target the torso for the third time, it just does another double damage. The final body part is the head, and so the first attack on the head dazes the opponent, which causes them to stagger and swing wildly. The second attack on the head dazes the opponent for a longer duration, and the final attack for the head slices the opponent's neck, which causes a bleeding effect. And so the bleeding effect will be like it's just long-term bleeding, so damage will be taken throughout the entire battle. And so that's it for Thorfinn, and next character is Askeladd. So his weapon is a sword, and his fighting style is sword combat. And his stats are strength of 8, agility of 9, vitality of 10, stamina of 8, and a defense of 8. And to explain his stats, he has a strength of 8 because in his battles against Thorfinn, he proved that he was a stronger person. His agility of 9 comes from when he was younger and decided to battle, how quickly he moved around his dad. His vitality of 10 comes from all the battles that he's been through, so he must be very strong. His stamina of 8 and defense of 8 both come from his long-term battles and how he just bullied Thorfinn basically in the fights. So the controls that Askeladd has, if X and square equals a strike, triangle Y equals a parry, and a perfectly timed parry allows a reverse strike for double damage. B or circle unequipped sword or equipped sword, and if your sword is unequipped, you can do a power punch, a parry, or a headbutt. And so A or cross is a dash strike, RB or R1 is a special, LB and L1 is taunt, LT or L2 is sprint, RT and R2 is charge, and so Askeladd charges a blow that enhances move. And so charge plus X is a power strike, charge plus Y is a power parry, charge plus A is a power dash strike, and his special is called War Cry. So War Cry is a move that allows the player to perform a war cry and call in a swarm of archers into battle. For 10 seconds, a barrage of arrows attack the foe, and players gain the strength boost for these 10 seconds. So the third character is Thor's, whose weapon is either a sword or a bow, and so his stats are strength of 9, agility of 9, vitality of 10, stamina of 9, and a defense of 10. So the reason for his high stats is because we saw Thor as somebody who's very powerful and it took a bunch of bows to take him down. And so his strength comes from the fact that he unarmed Askeladd in the battle, and Askeladd is seen as a strong warrior, so Thor must be even stronger. His controls is X for strike, Y for heavy strike, and B to equipped and unequipped bow. So his bow attacks is X for shoot, Y for bash, A for dash, and LT and RT and aim to shoot respectively. And so back to sword, and A is a dash strike, RB is special, LB is a punch or an elbow, which I implemented because Thor didn't really want to use his sword unless he absolutely had to. LT is guard, and RT is stun attack. His special called Steel Wall, which allows the players to toughen their skin for 15 seconds, which blocks all incoming damage. So next and finally we have Thorkel, whose weapons are a double axe, a spear, and a log, and his fighting style is powerful strikes and axe throws. His stats are a strength of 10, agility of 6, vitality of 10, stamina of 9, and defense of 9. And I put his vitality of 10 because, against Thorfinn, his fingers got cut off. He didn't really care. His strength of 10 is also from those battles where he showed remarkable strength. And his agility is kind of lower since he's a bigger dude. And so his controls are X for heavy attack, Y for grapple, B for guard, A for a stomp, which blows back the opponent, RB for special, LB to swap weapons, LT to aim, and RT for weapon throw. You can throw the double axe, spear, or the log. His special is called Barrage, which unleashes a combo of moves that cannot be avoided if connected. So that is all for the characters, and next I want to go over the modes that the characters can be played in. And so the first mode is campaign or story mode. So in campaign mode, you play through the story of Vinland Saga, which presents different acts that you can use different characters with. And so the first act is called the Rise and Fall of Thors. You begin the story in the early days of Thors as you fight along Thorkel. And then you time skip to present days as Thors and his family, and then the story ends with Thor's death, and it all sums up to around 2 hours. The second act is called Thorfinn's Revenge. You continue the original story as Thorfinn. Time progresses in a weekly manner in this act, where you can train to increase your skills, take on Askeladd, or take on side missions. Side missions are assigned to Thorfinn by Askeladd, where he may be asked to take out the enemy captain, sneak into an army, or rescue an ally. The storyline follows the anime except for side missions and a thing known as random encounters. Random encounters is basically like an entire system, meaning like the world in itself is kind of living. And so like the time progresses and other armies can like recruit new people, get stronger, and your army can also do the same thing. And so the enemies can grow in level, like grow in materials and weapons throughout the world. And these random encounters connect to this system as an empire that you have previously attacked may rebuild and attack you or be a spy among your ranks. I got this idea from the Nemesis system in the Shadow War games where like an orc may come that you previously killed or that killed you and come back and fight you later. And so I kind of wanted this to be built around that where like a different armies they kind of just don't just die when you kill them. Like they may rebuild as a different name or the captain may recruit new people. So one interesting thing about this random encounter mode would be that you can either play as Thorfinn or Ashlad when you do these missions. So if like an enemy comes to your camp, you can choose either of the two to take on this battle. So the last mechanic of the second act will be the leveling system. And so since Thorfinn starts out kind of a younger child and turns progressively older, you have to implement the points yourself. So if you want to be stronger, you implement your skill points to his strength. And also with this, you have to level up his special moves. So you don't begin with all 3 attacks. You just have to have 1 and then 2 and then 3 as you progressively get older and progressively get more points. So next, this third act doesn't really entirely follow the main story, but you take part in playing as Storko and you fight against Thorfinn in the bridge like it did in the anime. However, it then turns into like a little mini arc where you play as Storko and his clans, you take on rival clans on sea and on land. So this last and fourth arc portrays the end of the Vinland Saga where you play the last 2 battles that Thorfinn had against Ashlad, and it also continues to the end that the anime left off on, not the manga. So that just about wraps up the final act of the story and the campaign in general. And so I bet you're thinking that the other characters are kind of limited when it comes to playing time than Thorfinn, because Thorfinn's most of the story as you use them in the entire second act, and you can use them in the third and fourth act a little bit. However, this issue can be solved with the versus mode, where you can take control of these 4 playable characters plus a created warrior, which I'll get into later. So with the limited amount of characters in the game plus a few created warriors that you can make, I wanted versus mode to not be a mode where you can only use a little bit amount of characters and take on the same amount of battles over and over again. So I found a solution to this problem. So I wanted the combat to me be more stage based than more combat based. And what I mean by this is that the stage that you pick heavily determines how the battle would go. And so the first example of this is the boat stage. So the boat battle begins with both players on separate boats. Players can choose to use a bow for long distance combat or jump from ship to melee the opponent. Boats may sink, causing players to fall and swim in water. And there's also water combat, but it's slower and kind of your swings don't really do as much damage. And so the second battle is called the circle battle, where the players are surrounded by clan members are confined in a circle to battle. And so this was shown a lot in Vinland Saga as they took part in a lot of these battles. I'm not sure what they're exactly called, but these battles where people are just circling and watching, these take part kind of like a spar. And so the third battle is in the woods, and so the players are placed in the woods and can use several different ways to maneuver. While Thorfinn can bounce through the trees to get the high ground to his opponents, Thorko may chop down all the trees to increase his sight. Trees can be used as a sound distraction or as a cover for stealth. And so that's it for the tree battle. Next is called the clan battle. This battle consists of a war between the 2 players and clan members. Players must fight many enemies but also focus on the other player. The winner is determined by whoever clans defeats the other person's entire clan, so just killing the other player won't cause you to win the entire battle. And so there are other stages that I'm thinking about but I haven't implemented inside the game yet. And so that's the end of the versus mode, and next we have Empire mode. So if you're familiar with the Dynasty Warriors series, you probably heard of a game called Dynasty Warriors Empires, as there's like 8 of them. I think there's a 9th one coming out soon. And so this mode is kind of inspired by the Dynasty Warrior Empire games, and so what this mode revolves around is that you take control of one of your created warriors to challenge various empires, and so you expand your empire by recruiting soldiers to join you and appoint them to different ranks like soldier, the leader, or just somebody who works the fields. Your role as commander is to take care of 3 different tasks, which are battle, economy, and the political side of running an empire. You can control the economy by forming alliances and trading, mining and farming, or raiding other empires for their resources. In battle, you can choose any of your appointed soldiers and take them into battle. You also have the ability to switch between them in the middle of the battle. And so there's 2 different types of battle. One is a war. A war is a large battle between 2 to 4 different empires. A last man standing competition, but any empire can surrender to avoid losing all of their forces. The goal is to lower the population of another empire so you can attack them later when they're weakened. And so the second one is a raid, and a raid is a stealth-based attack where you have the advantage over your opponent. The goal is to steal resources and capture other warriors from the other empire. The interesting thing about this though is that other empires can challenge you to a war or a raid. So if you're not prepared, then you may be taken down as an empire, have to start all over or start back from a save. And so the goal is to defeat both Thorkel and Ashland-led empires to become the strongest of them all. But after this, you can also continue the mode as other empires will start rebuilding and try to challenge you as the top. So the next mode is called Create a Warrior, and this is how you create your fighters using Versus or Empire mode. In this mode, you can create a character using many different skin colors, hair types, mustaches, beards, facial set, whatever, just normal customer customization. And so one thing that's interesting, height and weight have a factor in your skills. So a bigger dude won't be as agile as somebody who's smaller, and a smaller dude won't have as much strength. And so you receive a certain amount of skill points that designate to certain skills of your warrior, and you can select from many different fighting styles. For example of these fighting styles is First and Archer. And so Archer is a mastery of bow combat skills, allowing you to use high agility to get high ground to snipe your opponent. However, they're not very proficient with hand-to-hand combat, so you have to use your dodging skills if you get up close to your opponent. The next is a dual sword user, and so they're a master of two-blade combat and quick hand-to-hand combat. And the third is a great sword user, who's a master of a large blade that has a wide swing. Swing times are slower and reaction speed also drops as well. And the fourth is a sword and shield, so they're a master of shield and proficient at sword combat, and they prioritize defense over offense. So these are just 4 small examples, but there's many different types of fighting styles. And that's the end of Create a Warrior mode. So that about wraps up the ideas I have for this game called Vinland Saga. And maybe I can make another feature in the far future where I continue these ideas and probably have more concept art, but this is it for now. In another video, I want to go over probably some more anime that deserve anime games like Jujutsu Kaisen, another Black Clover game, a Magi game, a new Bleach game, and many more. But that's all I have for this one. The drought of anime games has really affected me as a person because I usually love to play them, but most of them are probably on old systems now, so I haven't really got to do it as much. And so I believe these concepts are probably interesting. Some random game developer may see this video and decide to make a new game, so I'll just see how it goes out. But that's all I have for this one, folks. If you want to leave a comment about some ideas that you have for this game, or maybe even some other anime games, so make sure you leave that in the comment section below. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to, and thank you for watching.